when I was a 26-year-old writer, and I'd been asked to write a monthly comic for DC Comics, and all I knew was that I needed something that I could go anywhere with, that I could tell any kind of story, because I'd never had to tell a story a month before, and I didn't know if I could. So Sandman was originally imagined as something that would let me tell any kind of story I needed to tell. Probably by the end of the first year, I knew what kind of thing I was doing. And I'd say by the middle of the second year, I knew the shape of the whole story, and I knew what was going to happen. I knew who was going to live and who was going to die, more or less. And then it was a matter of just holding on tight and hoping against all hope that I actually would be able to tell that story before it got cancelled. The original Sandman, the first book, Preludes and Nocturnes, is 8 issues long. And it's 8 issues long because at issue 8 was when they would call you and tell you they were cancelling.
Oh.
And you would have, you had a year, so you had 4 more issues to wrap it up. So I had, my whole plan was it was going to be an 8-issue storyline and then 4 short stories, and then obviously we'd be cancelled. Except we weren't cancelled.
30 years from the original series, what's exciting to you about seeing the story continue, both in its new adaptations and in the Sandman universe comics?
Not feeling like I made a slice of history. Because, the idea that a 30-year-old comic still has relevance, that a story that's 30 years old, these were your grandparents' comics, and that they can still have relevance is incredibly exciting. So that's been part of the joy of watching over the last few years the Sandman universe stuff, where people are just taking ideas and spinning off with them and going and having fun and building them, and the joy of having people like Cy and now like Willow writing some of these amazing artists is a joy. And also I'm getting to do Sandman in different ways. I've been getting to do it working with Dirk Maggs on Audible as a giant audio drama where we've done a very direct adaptation, and we're also getting to do it now with Netflix as a slightly looser but still faithful adaptation. And so all of that is a delight, and it all makes it feel like something happening now and not like something that happened a long time ago.
The Sandman universe has a new series which started on August 4th, The Dreaming Waking Hours, and it's written by our next guest, G. Willow Wilson! G. Willow, I love your name.
Oh, thank you so much. Hi, Yvette. How are you?
It is so nice to meet you. Now, G. Willow, you first came to the Sandman purely as a fan in your teenage years. What did the series mean to you at that age?
I first read The Sandman in the late 90s as a teenage goth, and for me, what's interesting looking back now is that by the time I read that series, it was already part of the culture, and so I was already wearing the death outfit without knowing what it was. So, to pick up the series and be like, oh, this is where this comes from, was really, really interesting for me, and it had a huge impact, I think, on my sense of how you tell stories in the graphic medium, of the scope of the kinds of stories you can tell, the way that you can put on a twist on legacy characters to make them relevant and fresh again for a new audience. And all of those tools that I was sort of unconsciously picking up reading that series at that age, I think have been tremendously valuable to me, in my own creative life, reimagining different stories and working in, sort of the Sandman universe. So it really feels like coming full circle.
Now, when you learned you were going to be writing The Dreaming Waking Hours, what did you want to bring into the universe that wasn't there yet? What was your in to the story?
When you're dealing with a legacy series that is as beloved as The Sandman is, you have to kind of balance two things. Number one, the history that longtime readers have with the series, the emotional investments that they have in that place and those characters, and also creating a new entry point for people who might not be as familiar with the series. I was sort of going through this roster of characters who've lived in the Sandman universe and in The Dreaming over the years and thinking, who haven't we heard from yet? And at the time, I was going through a bout of insomnia, and I was thinking to myself, my God, you know how happy I would be to have a nightmare right now, because at least it would mean I was asleep. And it was like a bolt out of the blue. All of a sudden, Ruin, this nightmare who's tired of being a nightmare, wants to be something else, was kind of there and complete. And I was like, oh, there it is. That's the end. That's how we get back into this history from a point of view that's conducive to bringing in new readers, and that maybe gives us a fresh perspective on this really beloved set of characters and place.
In my 20s, I used to have terrible nightmares. And then somewhere around year 1 of Sandman, they kind of stopped. And they stopped because every time I'd have a nightmare, I would wake up so happy. And I'd scribble it down. I'd grab a notebook by my bed and I'd put the details of whatever this awful nightmare was. And I would just be so happy. And they just stopped, and I figured that whoever sent the nightmares just got tired of getting the wrong reactions from them.
That's amazing.
I cannot wait to read Waking Hours. Okay, so let me just calm myself down, silence my inner fangirl. We mentioned how the Sandman was transcending the panels of the comic book page. In July, fans got to experience the Sandman Audible series. Joining us now is the director of that series, Dirk Maggs. Welcome, Dirk.
Thank you, Yvette. Lovely to be here.
Oh my gosh, and thank you for bringing your hair because it's amazing. Neil and Dirk, how did you guys first meet?
It was a hair retrospective.
I knew we'd go there.
We failed to meet, although we first encountered each other in about 1992 when Dirk was doing, he was adapting The Death of Superman for British radio as an audio drama.
Yeah.
And it became a huge phenomenon in the UK. And Phyllis Hume, who was at DC Comics back then, decided that we should become acquainted, and she gave Dirk Sandman graphic novels, which was, Sandman was still being written, and Dirk read it and went, this is a drama. And what happened then, Dirk?
And then the BBC said, I think we've done enough comic book stuff with you now, Turkey. Off you go and do some terrible comedy instead. And so that was it. We didn't do it for the BBC. And I thought that was it, game over. So it was very sad because I'd never read anything like it. And actually, I thought of all the things we were doing, and I'm very proud of our Superman and Batman. But I thought, wow, this guy is writing some interesting stuff here. Wouldn't it be great to put it in a studio? Little knowing it would take 28 years to actually get there.
Well, it was worth the wait.
Yeah.
Dirk, what was the process of taking the comic book scripts and turning them into an audio experience?
Really, the process with Neil was very easy because Neil is still alive, which is an enormous amount of help. It actually means I can talk to the author without using a Ouija board. And not only that, but the author in this case is a supremely kind, indulgent, patient man who will put up with the questions of someone who normally is just a drummer and give him intelligent replies. So it was wonderful to have Neil accessible, and the real joy was to actually get Neil's original scripts, which he wrote at the time for the artists. And one of the things about the scripts is they're kind of like the blueprint. They're kind of like the scaffolding behind the facade, which is the story. And you get into Neil's mind at the time when he's writing them, 27-year-old Neil, and what he wants to see. And what, I don't know if Neil, you knew this, but there's real poetry in your descriptions that no one but a single artist would read. Well, I know you know that now because you've been reading these descriptions as part of the narration. But really, they were a piece of literary art in their own right, the scripts. So I had those to base things on. We come to the decision that we were going to stick pretty closely to the original work, because why wouldn't you? Effectively, there is nothing needs really changing. Occasionally, here and there, one might just, touch slightly on the steering wheel, but there is nothing much you need to do. And they just rock. They totally rock. So Neil as narrator now is being Neil the writer. We're in his head. And then off the page, I'm going to extend this metaphor to snapping point. come the characters and we get this wonderful sort of sense of being inside Neil's head. The nicer part, the classy part.
The classy part. Okay, well, besides the star actors, you had to cast something like 150 other parts. Kudos to you. What was that process like, Dirk?
Well, I've got to say, our casting team, Marielle and Nicola, who were doing a lot of the casting, did a fantastic job. There are way many more parts than we could comfortably deal with in a given situation with a studio that probably held 6 people and was really only built for 1. If you know the Marx Brothers works, you'll know there's a thing called the stateroom scene where they're trying to cram into a cupboard on a boat. Well, that's kind of how it was in this situation. I had to think of a way through this, and I thought what we need is all the very best audio voice actors in London. And London is a really good place to get voice actors because, of course, BBC still runs spoken word and drama and so on and so forth. So actors as busy as Michael and James, who was in a play at the time, you know, you're not expecting to see them. You're getting people who normally would get a marquee, who are coming in as part of the ensemble, and everybody kind of checked their egos at the door. And we ended up with a really lovely situation. There were certain episodes, like, for example, A Midsummer Night's Dream, where the temperature in the studio kind of climbed into the late 90s, but the upside was that the cast, we were pretty much doing the story from soup to nuts. So if you're in the room with them, you're watching one of Neil's greatest stories just happen in front of your eyes with a bit of extra Shakespeare here and there. So it was a wonderful experience.
Speaking of the amazing cast, we are joined by the devilish Michael Sheen. Welcome to the panel, Michael.
Hello, Zach. How you doing?
I'm good. So happy to have you with us. So, Michael, now you are on the hot seat. How did you put your spin on Lucifer?
I mean, I remember when I first read Sandman. I'd left Wales to come down to London to go to drama school, and one of my fellow classmates at RADA, in the first few weeks, said to me, "Do you read comic books?" And I said, "No, I don't." And I thought, like superheroes, I'm not really into all that. And sorry, DC. And he said, "Here we are," and he gave me some Alan Moore. He gave me Brief Vendetta, and Watchmen, and Swamp Thing, and Constantine, and Sandman. And I remember reading the first few Sandmans, and it just sort of, it did literally change my life. It sort of both reinforced what I was already interested in, but opened doors to whole universes for the rest of my life. I mean, it created my taste, really, I suppose. It led me to finding out about Joseph Campbell and comparative mythology and Carl Jung and I mean, all kinds of stuff. It just blew my mind. And certain things really stayed with me. And one of those things was the character of Lucifer when you first meet him early on in the story, and that kind of young Bowie look. That image had really stayed with me. So when I came to do Lucifer, that was there at the back of my mind. And I love the idea of someone who looks very angelic. I mean, he is an angel, he's the fallen angel, and that young Bowie with the curly blonde hair is very angelic and sort of chirpy. Hello, and it takes you by surprise. You're expecting Lucifer to be Lucifer. And of course, you don't have to, it's like, "Hello, Dream, how are you?" And I love that idea of sort of surprising the audience and pulling the rug out from under their feet, which Neil is so brilliant. Of course, the first thing I ever saw to do with Sandman was the cover of Preludes and Nocturnes, out of Dave McKean art. And even from that, I knew I was entering into a whole other world. And then, of course, getting to know Dave many years later was a bit of a dream come true.
He is such a singular talent and such a singular vision. It was weird with Sandman. I think we had this huge fight on our hands right in the very beginning when we told DC that the title character Morpheus would not be on every cover. I remember them coming to us like, "How will people know this is Sandman?" And we said, "Well, because the word Sandman will be on every cover." And having lost that battle, they never fought again. They were like, "Okay, well, obviously we don't know what this thing is, and they're doing things that break all the rules because you have to have the character on the cover, and they aren't. So they're just doing their thing." And it really was Dave having that fact. And also, around Sandman 9, Dave refusing to be fired. Karen Berger fired him. He was in New York, and she said, "We don't have time for you to do any more Sandman covers." Then he said to me, I've been fired. And I said, "What are you going to do?" He said, "Well, I'm going to spend the next 2 days painting the next 8 Sandman covers, and then I'm going to send them over to her, and I'll see what she says." And that's what he did. He just made the rest of the Doll's House covers.
Amazing.
He did all the covers and sent them over. And what was she going to do? They were brilliant.
Of course, I had spent a fair amount of time with Neil fairly recently when we did Good Omens together. So I got used to Neil being on the other side of the camera and close to me, which I liked. But he's sort of creeping ever closer, like a game of Grandma's Clock. Is that what it's called? Where, you know, every time I look around, he's not behind the camera now. Now he's actually standing next to me in the recording studio, narrating the damn thing. I mean, if he gets any closer, we'll have to have an operation to be separate.
I love the fact that I get to work with Michael. Michael and I have been friends since 2010, and we've been working together since 2017, and I get to just admire him as an actor more and more, and the very, very peculiar feeling of having my friend Michael standing next to me in the studio and opening his mouth, and this voice that basically belongs to David Bowie playing Lucifer coming out of his mouth, and I'm just looking and going, how does he do that? How can that work? And I forget that my friend Michael is also one of the greatest actors of our age. It was an absolute delight. We were incredibly lucky at the kind of cast who came out for Dirk, and also who came out for Sandman, because we're lucky in that there are Sandman fans everywhere. And we get to punch above our weight. You know, we get to get Willow coming in and writing The Dreaming because she was a Sandman fan and she wants to write Sandman. We get Michael Sheen, we get Kat Dennings, we get these amazing people coming in and fighting to do it because they love Sandman, and we are so lucky.
Like we said earlier, The Sandman is in dozens of languages and has been in print continuously for over 30 years. Why do you think The Sandman not only endures, but transcends media?
For me, the answer is that I really didn't know what I was doing. And I didn't know what I was meant to be doing, and I didn't know how to do it, and I did it anyway. Mm-hmm. And that, just doing it, also meant that everything I was seeing, everybody I met, every thought going through my head, made it onto the page. And every way that I could tell stories, I was telling stories, I was trying new things. And I think that it hasn't aged and it hasn't dated in probably the way that it should. You can absolutely see places where it's completely of its time, and you can see places where my heart was in the right place, but I didn't have a clue what I was doing. And I think that's fine and that's forgivable, because overall, I think I, along with dozens of astonishing artists, and along with people who are unsung, like Todd Klein, our amazing letterer, who did miracles that then nobody notices are there, you know, creating lettering font styles for characters like Delirium or Dream or Desire. I thought I was making something completely disposable. If I'd known I was making something that would last, I probably would have had a lot more attention, and it probably wouldn't have worked.
How about the rest of you? Why does it transcend for all of you?
Like I said, it sort of changed my world, really. It gave me an introduction to things that have had a huge impact on my life and who I am today. And it led me, you know, it is a story about stories. And as such, you know, as Neil said, he wanted to come up with something that allowed him to tell whatever story he wanted. And because of that, it roams across time and space and through mythology and history and Shakespeare, you know, it was such an explosion of the imagination and creativity. And yet at the same time was grounded in a real kind of edgy earthy realism as well. So it had something for everyone, but instead of being a kind of jack of all trades, it seemed so specific. And it was just like, I mean, it's like when I, as an actor working on Shakespeare, you can literally feel your brain expanding, like your consciousness growing because of what Shakespeare does in his plays. And reading The Sandman was a similar experience for me. It, like, I could feel my consciousness getting bigger because of what was in it and what it introduced me to. And because it is about sort of primal, deep things like the dreaming, like reality and concepts like fairy. You know, it of course it's timeless. I mean, it's about the endless, and the story itself is endless, and so it will go on forever.
Speaking from the point of view of adapting it to another medium, what's great about it is that it's doing everything that Michael's just described. It's this enormously, the conceit of it, and I'm not using conceit pejoratively there, but the scale of the imagination, all of Neil's misspent years in libraries as a kid, all that reading is just pouring out on the page in sort of torrent, like a dump tank of ideas. And to have started this journey, in audio particularly, where we're sticking very close to the originals, is great, because I know, well, we all know where it's going to go, but the journey of discovery is getting an actor. I mean, when Michael comes in and starts playing Lucifer, I'm thinking, oh, wow, I can't wait to hear where this is going to go. And of course, we have all that to look forward to, and the rest of the cast as well. So, I you know, hats off to Neil. You know, it's an astonishing piece of work.
Willow, how about you? Why do you think The Sandman endures?
You know, to me, what was really astonishing about Sandman, especially the first time that I read it through as a teenager, was that unexpected people were at the center of the story. I think, you know, we're kind of taught to look to the most obvious figures to be heroes, the politicians, the famous people, all of this. Whereas in Sandman, the guy sitting next to you on the bus could be Lucifer or the King of Dreams. And as such, you get stories about characters who I think were kind of pushed to the margins, especially at the time in other types of stories, right? And now they're at the center. And that makes you look twice at the world around you. It makes you sort of question, you know, who is telling the story, and what point of views are we missing, and who is unmourned. I mean, that also really struck me, is that, you know, like, this came out in the middle of the AIDS epidemic when, you know, a lot of people were trying to push, you know, these deaths and this terrible thing that was happening under the rug. And Sandman said, no, pay attention. This is important. These people are important. And that was very striking to me. And I think that's part of the reason that it still feels so relevant, because it kind of reminds you there are still stories we haven't heard. You know, there's still things we're afraid to talk about. And it's the people around you who could be the true spinners of tales. And that really has stuck with me through the years.
Well, that answer was amazing.
I've thought about this a lot.
Oh, gosh. So good you are. I want to thank all of you for this wonderful time. I had the best time talking to all of you. But before we go, we can't forget about the dedicated fans. We asked and they responded, and we get it. You want to know about the Netflix show. So, Neil, can you tell us anything? We've been asked about when it will be released. We've been asked about the cast details. What can you tell us, Neil?
Well, I can tell you that due to COVID, everything, as with every other piece of television being made around the world right now, somebody pushed a giant pause button. And we've taken advantage of our pause button just to try and get the scripts as close to perfect as we possibly could, which has been really fun. And that right now, as the universal pause button is starting to come off, we're starting to cast again, we're starting and getting these inspiring and wonderful emails with production designs, with places that I've never seen in the comics before, now being rendered in 3D and being asked to comment on it. That's amazing. there's not a lot I can say. Something that I will say is part of the joy of doing the audio adaptation was going, this is going to be the nearest thing we can do to an audio book of those first 3 graphic novels, and hopefully all of the graphic novels. And we're going to start it in 1988. And it's going to end in about 1991 or 1992. Sandman is a very compressed story, even though it takes place all through time and space. That's where that story takes place. What we're doing with Netflix is saying, okay, it's still going to start in 1916, but the thing that happens in Sandman 1, the point that the story starts, is not 1988, it's now. And how does that change the story? What does that give us? What does that make us have to look at that we wouldn't have had to look at if we were setting it as a period piece? What is that going to do to the gender of characters? What is that going to do to the nature of characters? What's that going to do to the story? And that has been an absolute delight, because it means we are always being true to the story and being true to the characters, but it gives us tremendous freedom to go, okay, if we were doing it now, what would Sandman be? And that, again, is very liberating.
Well, as a fan myself, I cannot wait to see it. And I just wanted to share that I was a tiny part of the Sandman universe. Check this out. It's a drawing by artist Domo Stanton of me flying through the city.
Lovely.
Mm-hmm. I'm going to do it. Well, thank you all so much. It's been wonderful chatting about the Sandman. Thank you, G. Willow, Dirk Maggs, Michael Sheen, and of course, Neil Gaiman. Thanks for joining us, and enjoy the rest of DC Fandome!
Dreams, nightmares, demigods, and fallen angels. I'm officially in and can't wait to dig into Sandman. Right now, let's get back to hearing from our fans and see what questions they, or maybe even you, have.
Batwoman.
Already, Batwoman kind of stands out because she doesn't technically have like a superpower. Everything that she uses to fight bad guys is more of her intelligence and Luke and her physical strength. So I do look forward to seeing that portrayed in that perspective, like from a Ryan perspective, from like this street kid's perspective, from a person that saw these superheroes growing up, because that was also really important for Ryan, you know, to see Batwoman be an out lesbian, and to have a superhero role model to look up to, and then now all of a sudden I'm filling those shoes. So to not only fill those shoes, but to play amongst the ones that have already been doing it, I think that that's going to be a lot for her. I'm sure it's going to be a culture shock for her, but I also think that it's really cool because it's really like when that world meets the superhero world and it's in all of its dynamics.
Hola mi gente, I'm Gabby Cam, your host from Mexico City. For nearly 60 years, DC has played with the intriguing concept of the multiverse. It allows multiple dimensions all to exist at the same time, which means multiple versions of me could actually exist right now. And not only that, on these other worlds, I could be a different gender, ethnicity, a villain, or even an alien. I wish I knew what kind of alien I would be. Maybe in this panel, I will find out.
The multiverse has been at the heart of DC almost from the very start. But the moment most fans think of is this one.
The
in
Flash.
the Silver Age of comics, when the Flash met the Flash in 1961. In Flash of Two Worlds, DC created a story where the Flash could be Barry Allen and Jay Garrick at the very same time, and created the architecture that would allow DC to be expansive, inclusive in their storytelling and in their universe,
and is the world that fans now know, and also laid the groundwork for the ambitious crossover event Crisis on Infinite Earths. Crisis on Infinite Earths brought the DC multiverse
Really
together,
good story.
bringing together DC superheroes and supervillains in a truly epic event. But this is not the first time DC has explored the multiverse, and trust me, it will not be the last time fans will see it.
It's so confusing, but it's so worth it once you understand it.
Creative concept, and how it can open up endless opportunities for storytelling for our comic books, TV shows, film, and games creators. Here in the DC fandom, I am so excited to have our own crossover moment and talk about what the multiverse really is for DC, how it informs every story DC tells, and how fans can expect to see it on the page or on the screen moving forward. I'm Tiffany Smith, and I'm so excited to welcome our panelists here today. First up, we have got a legendary comic book artist in his own right.
Jim
He is also the chief creative officer and publisher for DC, and he sits at the heart of everything DC does and is a master of the multiverse, Jim Lee.
Thank you.
Hell of an artist.
He oversees DC films, which run the gamut from The Joker to Aquaman, and has huge plans for where DC movies are about to go next. Walter Hamada, how you doing, sir?
Hello, I'm good. Great to be here.
And finally, one of the key architects of DC's Arrowverse and the amazing Crisis crossover event, he is executive producer of nearly a dozen fan-favorite DC shows like Batwoman, The Flash, Supergirl, Doom Patrol, Titans, and the upcoming Superman and Lois, and many, many more. It's great. How are you?
Very good, very good. Great to be here.
Let's just kind of go to the top of it, and I'm going to go to you, Jim. What exactly is the DC multiverse for people who may not know?
Yeah, I think when people think about superheroes, they know the names, the costumes, the powers, the origins, and it kind of tends to be this sort of monolithic kind of thing. But one of the things that really is distinct and unique to DC is that it's the first large work of fiction that has leaned upon this idea that we are not alone. We have this reality, this Earth, but that there are alternate realities that sit side by side with us in an infinite number. And on each of these different Earths, we exist, but maybe in slightly different variations, right? We might be different gender on another planet, or we might be furry creatures. And this extends to all the superheroes. So you start seeing this kind of endless spectrum of characters that you can create. And so it allows us to have the freedom and to create different versions and then lean upon that canon as we, change up the mythology and the pantheon of characters to better reflect the true diversity and inclusivity that our audiences want and that our audiences live in.
And you kind of touched on it already, Jim, but let's go to you, Greg. How do you feel like the multiverse really informs the stories that you tell through DC TV?
I would say that when we started out just with Arrow, 8 or 9 years ago now, it wasn't our intention to just replicate what everyone had done so brilliantly in comics. And it wasn't until The Flash came along and we tried in the pilot of The Flash to put the two of them on screen together that I remember watching that first scene of the two of them together and thinking like, oh wow, this makes me feel like the DC books made.
Oh, so
like
awesome.
1 + 1
Started it all.
The other thing it allows for is the vastness. You really feel the vastness of each of these different worlds. And I think it adds to the importance of these heroes and the myth of them, and that's been really exciting. And again, the element of surprise. If the universe that everyone's constructing, the different showrunners and creators and directors, and obviously with Walter and Jim helping shepherd all of it, if it can go to all those different places and still be tethered together, I think just as an audience member, I want to show up and not know like who might I see here. And I think that's incredibly exciting.
Well, and I think it's something too where we talk about comic book writers getting to play with the characters in different ways. Same thing on the TV shows where it's when you bring a character from one show into another show, those writers now get to play with that character or a different version of them, which I think the fans, myself included, have loved seeing on TV.
Yeah, that's a lot of fun for the actors. They love it when they play a villain version of themselves from another planet. Everybody loves to play a villain.
You face some of the greatest evils known to man, and you defeated them. If you think so highly of yourselves that you can defeat any threat that comes your way,
feel about us?
And like you said, it
Crisis
wasn't
on
really thinking at the
Earth
outset
X.
about getting to this place of Crisis on Infinite Earths and seeing all of that. Can you talk to us a little bit about just leading up to that and everything that happened before, and maybe like when you got to the point where you're like, yeah, this is something we really want to talk about?
Well, I mean, really, it was so much of our motto behind the scenes was to try and create episodes and seasons and shows that we would want to watch. And so it just inevitably kind of kept going in that direction. One of my fellow EPs, Mark Guggenheim, is my own personal encyclopedia for a lot of knowledge of these things, and was really, the centerpiece of production-wise pulling the scope of those things together. And I would be remiss if I didn't just say just how much his own passion for all that has been, very inspiring. But we sort of kept, building block by block, and then truly in the last couple of years, and again in working with Walter and with Jim. It's really it's kind of taken a whole new level. We never thought we'd even be allowed to do Crisis, that was a pipe dream. We just kind of kept finding new ways to get all of our characters together. And then, the year before we did Crisis, we said, well, what if we just say coming next year, Crisis, and everyone was like, okay, yeah, you can say that. Well, I was like, well, I guess they've approved it then. Now.
Oh, wow.
I
didn't know that's pretty cool.
Really epic. I mean, there were just so many, obviously, so many Easter eggs and so many different little characters. But then, the guys calling about saying that if we could we possibly fit in Ezra? Is that a possibility? That's really for the first time historically.
When Ezra Miller's Flash showed up, I lost my goddamn mind.
I think it feels like the beginning of a whole new generation of how we can begin to do these things. And that's just as a storyteller, it's really, really exciting.
Well, I feel like a kid in a candy store being like, we got Crisis on Infinite Earths, what's next? But can you talk a little bit about what's going to happen in the world post Crisis on Infinite?
Well, we are, yes, because certain worlds have been combined, we're mindful of that now, in terms of how that will affect certain shows. And, in terms of what our crossover event will be next year, I think truly because of COVID right now and the pandemic, our aspirations aren't quite as large. We'd just like to start shooting again. That would be, nuts. Happy to invite any featured characters that, the guys want to have on. I think that was truly a thrill.
How did that crossover event happen with Ezra, and talk about the conversation of when you guys were like, could this work? Can we get him here?
We'd been developing on the feature side our Flash script for a while, which was leaning into the idea of the multiverse and playing in that sandbox. And again, I'm focused very much on the movies and what we're doing, and Jim was just like, would you, since we're leaning into the multiverse, do you think Ezra would ever do this crossover? I picked up the phone, called him, and before I could even finish the pitch, he was like, I'm in. Tell me when, where. Like, he's just such a fan.
Who would say no, though? Like, seriously.
He understands the importance of Flash and the character of his role sort of in that idea of the multiverse, that he immediately jumped on it. And then at that point, it was just Jim ran with it.
We were in a meeting, I think it was Walter, me, Peter Ronk was there. We kind of threw out this idea, and Peter was like, let me talk to Greg about this. And this was last minute, too, right?
But we had shot the crossover. So
Yeah, exactly. This is like right before the holidays.
We were editing, and then first call was like, wait a second, can Flash also bring us back in time to do this? Because,
exactly. Yeah, so we're on the holidays. I knew that we're down the wire, but I knew how meaningful this would be to the fans, just because Flash meeting created the multiverse. That the fact that this had never been done before, and that this was new footage. A lot of the stuff, like the Green Lantern, was kind of old footage. This was new stuff, and we had to track down the costume for Ezra. Luckily, he still fit into it. And Peter, spoke with Greg, and Greg graciously allowed us to do this at the very last minute. And Mark wrote dialogue at the last second, sent it over. It had to be kind of vague enough to not create too many expectations, but kind of solidify the fact that this is happening, that these Flashes are both the Flash in different universes. And the cool thing is, Ezra's Flash was never named the Flash in the movies. He got his name from meeting Grant, who knew he was the Flash. And like that's like so cool have that.
That is pretty fucking awesome.
Into the canon, right? And so that was it. It came together at the last minute, and it worked out great. Those guys kind of improvised and the lines, and
They definitely improvised.
Yeah,
There's a lot into it.
it was touching and funny, and it was just a great moment. And then when it went live, man, people's heads exploded. And then I think,
Well, there were a lot of people who worked on the show and had shot the episode and didn't know that it was in there. So they were watching. There were people that had been in the episode that were watching it live that night that wrote me, "I didn't know about this. Did you keep this a secret from me?" And I was like, "No, I wasn't. We just did it last week."
Yeah.
Is this cosplay?
This is cosplay.
Bro, I'm sorry. We're not. No. Also, the Flash. Because of the what? The Flash. Flash.
The Flash.
Flash. It's complicated. I like your outfit. It seems comfy. Yours is pretty cool. Smooth, safe, and breathable. About Barry Allen.
No.
What does that mean? This should be impossible now. It's impossible now? You don't know about the... Oh my god, don't do this to me. I don't know about the what.
Well, I kind of talked about
I'm
that
so
then, because I
freaking
know
cool.
The crossover events are such a big to-do anyway, getting all of the actors from all of the shows and the sets and everything working together at the same pace and timing, and then now throwing in the film piece as well. I feel like all of you guys just from talking to you and, knowing you a little bit, that you're a huge fan, so you're like, we'll do anything to make it work. But what was that moment like for you?
Well, I was honestly, I really do experience these shows just as a fan first. And so when I heard it, I just thought I would want to see that. I would want to see that, let alone be a part of it. And whenever anybody in this business is doing stuff from that place of like, how can we make this thing the best it can be, and how can we deliver something to everybody and that understands and loves these characters as much as we do, then the impossible stuff that seems impossible ends up becoming possible.
I think up to this point, we were the company was just organized in a way where TV was TV and film was film, and oftentimes DC and Jim was sort of the arbiter of like, hey, they want to use this character, using this character, and it became this like really weird situation where the fans they love the characters, they just want to see the characters, and this sort of opens the door for us to do more crossover, to really lean into this idea and just acknowledge the fact that there can be a Flash on TV and one in the movies, and you don't have to pick one or the other. You can love both, and they do both exist in this great multiverse. And I do think that moving forward, there's more opportunities for us to do things like this. And really, at the end of the day, it's about the fans, and I think the fans want to see it, and it gives us a way to sort of explore maybe some different stories and different ideas, and use the medium in a different way than it's been used thus far.
We can just dive in a little bit more into the DC films. Walter, for you, what does the multiverse really mean?
What the multiverse allows you to do is sort of lean into this idea of you can tell just great stories, and you don't have to really be as focused on it has to fit within a singular continuity. On one Earth, we have our Gal and Jason and Ezra version of the Justice League, and we can continue telling those stories. While on a separate Earth, we don't have to worry about the continuity. We can have a more grounded, real Year 2 Batman and build out that world, and not really worry about continuity, story elements, and et cetera. And so it's really kind of the best of both worlds, and allows us to take advantage of everything that's great about what we've done, and really allow us to sort of expand moving forward. And we're trying to keep it as simple as that. Like, there is that one Earth, the greater Earth of sort of this existing Justice League, and then the beginnings of another Earth that is sort of happening, that's early stages of Year 2 Batman. And then obviously there are outliers like Joker, which doesn't exist in either Earth, but that's okay. It's all part of the multiverse. Matt Reeves can continue to build out his Gotham, and he's got great plans to how to build it out, and build it out in a way.
So there it is. It's just part of the multiverse. I knew it. It was the only way.
Taking that Gotham and exploring it at HBO Max as a show, like, those are things that you can do because we don't have to worry about how that would impact Aquaman 2 or how that could impact The Flash. And so I think it just opens doors for us in ways that you couldn't have if you had to have a singular universe.
So let's get into some of the questions that we've got from fans. The first one is for you, Jim. It's from Van in the U.S. Now that Doomsday Clock has concluded, will we see any more of Alan Moore's comic characters cross over with the DC multiverse?
Probably less on the crossover side. You don't want to, dip into the well too often and kind of make it too regular a thing. It becomes too commonplace. You want to save it for really big epic storylines where you've got great creators.
Sorry,
like
I'm buying
who's able to come in
merchandise.
and, really deliver, a story worthy of that kind of concept. But we are, there's a spinoff. There's that Rorschach series that Tom King is writing. It's not like necessarily a crossover per se, but we are exploring more of the Watchmen universe. It's obviously got kind of a second life with the HBO TV series, and
Really
so
good
it's been
show,
fun
by the way.
exploring that.
Yeah, watch it.
But yeah, that's all I can share at this point.
The next one is for Greg from Swarup Kumar Singh in India. The Crisis on Infinite Earths finale showed that the multiverse is gone, and there exists only one universe and one Earth Prime. But since other shows like Titans, Doom Patrol, and the DC still goes on, is the multiverse actually gone, or is it recreated?
It's not gone. It's that was to really help us, sort of like the original reason for Crisis, when they were like, oh, we have too many worlds. Let's start combining things for the purpose of the books. I think for the purposes of the CW, those worlds are now one. But off network is like being off planet in a different part of the universe, but it's still alive and flourishing.
The multiverse. Every existence multiplied by possibility. And spread out before space and time in infinite measure. Civilizations rose and fell, and rose again across reality's grasping expanse. Life, a precious gift, persevering in the face of every obstacle. Until, finally, the age of heroes was born.
Okay, well, the next question is for you from Sumik Day in India. Will we get more multiverse movies or even Elseworlds movies like Superman, Red Sun?
I think it's the possibility is there. It's not, it really comes down to, like I said, our focus is great stories. And so if we come across the right filmmaker with an interesting story that doesn't work within our existing timeline, and it would work as an Elseworld, we would definitely explore it. I can say we're not currently developing Red Sun, so that isn't one of them. But it really comes down to when the right filmmaker or the right idea comes together. That's the beauty of multiverses. We can explore it. We can go down the road and take a shot at it. But what we don't want to do is be in a place like Jim was saying, like it should be special. It doesn't. You don't want I don't think you want an Elseworld movie every year, like clockwork. Like it'd be much better for it to be a special thing. And we also want them to be great. We want them to be special. We want to make sure that it doesn't just sort of feel like we're just cranking out a volume of different versions of these characters. There has to be a reason for it, and I think it has to be a reason that we're excited about, that we think the fans will be excited about. So, yes, the answer is yes, there will be opportunities. That one is not one that we're currently exploring.
We've got one more question for all of you guys. This is from Ryan Keller in the U.S. With the existence of the DC multiverse, how do you approach managing a wide variety of characters, stories, and universes for DC? And how would you work to help keep the audience connected with such a large variety of characters and stories? I imagine that you guys all have like a board somewhere in your house that's like, you open the doors and it's like, here's the characters in the whole world connected with yarns. I don't think any of you have that. If you do, please show us right now.
It's like one of those True Detective scenes or something where it's just like newspaper
yarns and pins. Yeah.
Oh, I think that is the challenge. There's so many characters, so many versions, but we have people through film, TV, within Berlanti's company. These are the assets we track and try to make sure that there aren't inconsistencies and that we are constantly communicating between ourselves so that we deliver something that's satisfying and maybe paints a bigger picture. And now that this has been established, this multiverse across all of the content, I think there's going to be a greater need for coordination to kind of deliver even cooler surprises going forward. I just want to really thank and applaud Greg for really laying the groundwork for all this, because they didn't have to do this. From what I hear from Mark Guggenheim, it's a crazy amount of work, and bringing all these people together to deliver something that could potentially be very confusing or complicated, and being able to tell a story that's kind of derived from the canon, it is an amazing thing. And the fact that they've been able to do it year in, year out with different kind of crossovers and big events has been a real blessing, I think, for the DC universe, and has kind of shown that it can be done, but we just need to be on top of the storylines and where the characters are and how they're being used. But that's part of the job, and a lot of fun, there's a lot of fun involved as well, because we get to really explore really deeply into DC catalog sometimes.
When we were first pitching the idea of certain characters, there was a sense of like, okay, well, this was years ago, but like, oh, we might use this character in the movie space, so maybe we won't then use a character there. And I would say, well, I can watch an animated Batman, and I don't confuse animated Batman from the Batman in your movies to, something on a show. But it doesn't mean that we still don't have to warrant using that character. Certainly any kind of character with that kind of size and scope and that much meaning in the world like this. But, so we want to justify our use of any character, but at the same time, ultimately, I think it's in the, as we bring all of these characters into live action and to life, it's just so much more enriching and rewarding for everyone, to feel like, okay, the best idea wins, and the best version of the story is going to be what we're all really trying to serve.
I think in the past there have been like, well, features might do something with that, so stay away from it. It could be years before that character ever showed up on the screen, if it even showed up on the screen, And it was clear to us, like, it doesn't make sense to hold that back from fans. Let's explore that. And by the way, if they fall in love with the character on TV and we do something,
it just makes the movie even better
down the road, all the better. Like, it's just a greater awareness.
Just let them use it. It's not going to hurt anything.
For us, our board is much smaller because we have fewer things that we're working on. We have, within a movie, it's 120 pages and there's a handful of characters, whereas in TV, there's a bunch of other characters that pop up. So it's a little bit more straightforward for us. I think really Jim is the great sort of, he's the center of everything. So he has to know everything that we're doing features, everything that's happening on TV, and everything
to have his job.
And I think that's great that we have this guy who sort of knows the world better than anybody, who can sort of look at it and kind of go and come up and say, wouldn't it be great if Ezra showed up, we met Grant, and like, you don't get that without Jim sort of being sort of at the center of all this. And so I think it's just a great collaborative team, and it's really just the beginning of what we're doing here. I think with just the stuff that we're working on now, the idea of the multiverse, and really HBO Max being this other venue for us to really start to meet in the middle. I think if there is that sense that TV was TV and film was film, Max sort of becomes this place where we it's like, it'll be our clubhouse. Well, everything will gather into that space, and we'll be able to explore different opportunities and cross back over. And I'm excited about the potential of all the things that we can do with DC in the multiverse.
Awesome. Well, I want to say a huge thank you to the three of you guys for taking the time to chat with me and all of the fans here in the DC Fandome. This is such, like, we're talking about different platforms for things, and this is a whole new platform for fans to get to experience the DC multiverse as well. So thank you guys so much. This has been awesome.
Thank you, Tiffany.
Thanks, Thank you, Tiffany. That was amazing. Thank you so much.
I just realized.
The future certainly looks bright for the DC multiverse. I'm still not sure what I will look like on Earth 26, but I can't wait to meet me there. Now, if you're a big DC fan like me, then I'm willing to bet that you cannot wait for the Flash feature film to electrify the big screen. The good news is that you don't have to wait that long, because we're going right now with the filmmakers and the Flash himself, Ezra Miller.
Alright, give us some deets on this movie.
Hello, fans around the world. It's me, Ezra Miller.
Or quarantine.
Can you just move out your hair on the left side a little bit?
You don't like this? I'm Andy Muschietti, director of the Flash movie.
I'm Christina Hodson, the screenwriter of The Flash. I haven't spoken to humans in a while, so I'm going to be rusty.
I'm Barbara Muschietti, the producer of The Flash movie.
I play Barry Allen, aka The Flash, in the upcoming Flash movie. And I love you, and I'm excited to be here digitally with you. Flash fact, if you go to the bottom of Andy Muschietti's Wikipedia or IMDb page, you'll see that he actually has a PA credit on the 1996 Madonna movie Evita. Must ask you more about that, Andy.
Telling the story of one of the greatest superheroes of the DC world is a challenge. The most important thing is that it gets to your heart. Growing up with Batman and Superman and Flash, it was an opportunity to reconnect with childhood experiences reading DC Comics.
Flash fact, DC Comics actually stands for Detective Comics. Comics.
The tone for the film, I think, is very much Andy's signature.
He can jump from funny to scary to emotional really fast.
And it's also a time travel story, which I find very exciting.
Yes, time travel.
He managed to put these tiny little DC Easter eggs into the It movie.
Batman.
I like your glasses, Mr. Keene. You look just like Clark Kent.
I don't know about that.
One, he was vying for the job way earlier than any of us knew. Or two, while making the Flash movie, he discovered time travel for real, went back in time, and went and put all these things in just to mess with us. Either way, well played, sir.
You meet Andy, and you immediately can understand why he's the perfect choice for this movie. It's his compassion, his priority in this film of finding the heart of the story.
I'm also excited to see Andy's version of the Speed Force. He
Wow.
has done some doodles
Yes.
that I may or may not have taken and kept. They are literally unlike anything you've ever seen before.
Flash fact, did you know that according to actual comic book canon, Superman is both a vegetarian and a Metallica fan? Which is, of course, impossible. But then again, he's Superman.
Batman lost his parents. Superman lost his planet.
Barry lost his
Harley
mom.
Quinn lost her egg sandwich. But Barry, because he's got this ability to go back and manipulate time, he's the only one who can actually go and change his own personal story.
His mother was murdered, his father was framed and incarcerated, and all his journey from then was of a man trying to make things right.
And it sounds like a cliche, but script is everything. When I got to read Christina's first draft, I was just blown away.
The script has really captured his loquacity, his personality.
So you're fast.
That's an
That
oversimplification.
feels like an oversimplification.
I fell in love with the Flash
Paradox.
with Flashpoint. The combination of giant spectacle, action, and fun with this incredibly personal, intimate story of a boy just trying to save his mum.
He's someone who has the power of changing the events of the past, but by doing so can deteriorate the very fabric of the space-time continuum.
The juxtaposition between his vulnerability and his immense power is really what's exciting about superheroes to me. Flash fact, the hippopotamus is faster than the human being. Beware.
Every actor, every director, every writer brings something different to the character.
Barry, as a character, and especially the way Ezra plays him, he's a guy with so much heart, so much humor. Spending time with Ezra is kind of like spending time with Barry Allen.
Really, I can feel his passion and his enthusiasm and his creativity.
He was born to play this role.
Flash fact, the first appearance of the multiverse in DC Comics is actually a Flash comic. Flash Comics number 123, The Flash of Two Worlds.
Time travel isn't simple. It's not always a straightforward case of go back and change one thing and another thing changes in the future.
This film is immensely important because if you look around at the DC universe, obviously we have all of these characters that exist within their own bubbles. We even have now multiple iterations of the same story. I'm Batman and Batman. I'm Batman.
Sounds like a cool guy.
This movie, by opening that door that Flashpoint did in the comics, all of these stories and characters can start to collide.
Yes.
Hello?
This should be impossible now.
It should be impossible now?
You don't know about the...
Oh my god, don't do this to me. I don't know about the what.
The cinematic multiverse is going to be born out of this movie. It's born out of Barry's story.
It blows our minds. The level
Good.
of possibility
That's what
that
it needs.
exists within the context of this character in this story.
I can't wait for all of us to be able to sit down in a theater and enjoy these movies in the dark with a lot of people and with great snacks.
Oh, here we go.
Obviously, I don't want to spoil too much of the movie. I want you to be surprised when you see it. There's something that I can show you, a little sneak peek.
Oh my god. Nope, sorry, that's my fault. It was an accident. It's not my personal playlist, but that might have been my fault. Back to you, Andy.
So I'd like to share a couple of concept art drawings, and it's Barry Allen's new suit.
Ooh. Yes. Not so armory.
As you can see, it's more organic. You can see light embedded in it. It has been built by his friend Bruce Wayne this time.
That's Michael Keaton's Batman.
Flash fact. The first ever Batman movie is actually an unlicensed Batman Dracula movie made by Andy Warhol with a soundtrack by the Velvet Underground. It's unreleased, but there's 39 minutes that have been recovered, and I highly recommend watching them. They're extremely strange.
There are so many potential crossovers in the multiverse, so many cool things that you could do.
I would really love them to do a two-hander with Wonder Woman. I think they would solve a lot of problems, let me tell you.
I'd like to see Game of Thrones crossover. Instead of all the months that it takes traveling from Winterfell to King's Landing, it would happen in 2 seconds. Barry Allen in the Iron Throne.
I actually already have a weird behind-the-scenes DC multiverse crossover. My best friend growing up is Rob Pattinson's older sister.
Oh shit!
I've actually known the new Batman since he was 2 years old and in diapers.
I would like the Flash to meet in the multiverse Nicolas Cage. Not the Nicolas Cage Superman that never was. I want the Flash to meet Nicolas Cage, the person in this world, who I believe probably does have the ability to transcend space-time. It's a real proposition.
Oh shit.
I also can't wait to hear more about The Flash. Thank you, Andy, Barbara, Christina, and Ezra. Fun fact, we all know there are several Flashes: Wally West, Jay Garrick, Bart Allen, and Barry Allen. Did you know when Barry isn't working to save the world as the Flash, he's working to save Central City as a police scientist? Okay, that's all for me right now. I'm going to turn this over to Jaden Rodriguez, and I'll see you back here soon.
G'day DC Fandome, I'm Jaden Rodriguez from Australia, and I'm so excited to be here with you all. I just gotta say that being a total superhero freak that I am, I'm totally loving being part of this epic DC event. And you can't talk about superheroes without talking about the man himself, Batman. I mean, dude, can you imagine how awesome it would be to be Batman? In fact, if there's anything better than watching Batman, it's watching two Batmans, or Batmans. It doesn't matter. Let's have a look at this mashup of two fan-favorite Dark Knights who happen to reside in the opposite ends of the Bat spectrum.
Batman Beyond.
Terry, this is top priority. Go ahead, Bruce. But Wayne Power's Deep Space Probe is receiving an anomalous communication. I'm patching it into you now.
Is that you?
Clearly, that's not me, Terry. Apparently, it's what passes for me on this Earth.
Whoa! Who's the dweeb?
That would be Robin's counterpart.
The Joker. No way. That's the Joker?
That's not the Joker. It's a Joker.
I don't know, Bruce. Your friend with the Liberty Bell hair said the Joker.
No matter which universe he's from, he's a vicious and deadly psychotic.
He's throwing fish at you.
One thing's for sure. This Joker could up his thug recruitment game.
Yeah, pick up a fish and start tossing already, slacker. Wait, is he stealing a fish? Oh, this has got to be the dumbest heist.
The fish snapping of the century. Careful, you don't.
Hey, swell costume, by the way, Bruce. Must have taken forever to get the iron-on bat symbol just right.
Terry!
Oh, this one.
Actually,
Yeah, that ride's pretty sway, Bruce.
Don't let them catch you from behind.
What an odd thing to say.
Don't let them catch you from behind.
Hey, Bruce, I just noticed something about your collar.
again, not my collar. But what is it?
Are the eyebrows painted on?
Don't be. Oh, yeah, they are.
You know, my great aunt does the same thing with her eyebrows. Totally works for Aunt Phillips.
What the?
Now what's going on? Where's this?
I'm not sure. But whatever it is, it must be built on a hill.
Joker could really stand to run a comb through that wig, huh? Oh, easy, Boy Wonder. Let's not forget we're wearing elf shoes and support hose.
And who is he even shushing at this point?
Oh my god, this is great.
What's with the 57 random telescopes lying around for no reason?
Something's fishy here, Batman.
The Gotham High girls volleyball team's gonna be ticked when they find out their net was stolen.
Actually, I'm not sure which is more disconcerting. His trap, or the fact that these two can't seem to find their way out of it.
How about a fish fry?
Ooh, fish fry guy here is angling for a promotion. Settle down there, fish fry.
Wait a minute.
What is it?
Look at the Joker. Is it my imagination, or does he
have a mustache?
Now that is just not right.
When did they get the girl?
Wow, worst hot tub party ever. But on the bright side, Robin is already wearing his bathing suit.
I couldn't possibly deprive that poor hungry clam of its dinner.
Hold up! That's a clam?
Very touching. Oh, I wonder what a succulent hors d'oeuvre you should make.
It really is quite unsettling.
Well, a giant man-eating clam is... Wait, you're talking about the mustache one, aren't you?
It's mesmerizing.
Hey!
I would have gotten out of this in 2 seconds.
Aunt Phyllis could have gotten out of this in 2 seconds. By the way, Bruce, what do you feed paper mache?
Oh, what an idiot face!
Oh, be nice, Venus. Robin's sitting right next to you. You get it? 'Cause she was talking about... Never.
Mollusk? Some mollusk. Push yourself away, Robin.
Is it weird that part of me is rooting for the clam?
Can't get the sign. Robin!
I was actually feeling bad for Robin, but then I saw those elf booties again, and well... Hey, what happened?
That's the end of the transmission.
What do we do?
Not sure, but I know what we won't do.
What's that?
We never tell anyone what we saw here today.
Seriously? Not even the mustache?
Never.
I can tell you're serious. Know how? Your eyebrows. Very expressive on their own. Why you ever chose to paint?
Don't you start.
That was actually pretty funny.
I love it. Batman has such a great sense of humor. Okay, devoted fans teamed up to show out in force at the DC Fandome. Let's take a look at some of the best group cosplays, and coming up is a showdown like you've never seen before. Stay tuned for lots of fun and
Suicide Squad.
The Suicide Squad.
God, I miss conventions.
Come on, let's go.
Acclamations.
I like watching the stars. Orion and the plough.
Why is Robin so tall?
Polaris. And the big triangular thing. I win!
Suicide Squad. Here we go. Suicide Squad.
Even though we are in the Hall of Heroes, I know that if I was ever in trouble, I would call upon this next group to help me out. As you know, director James Gunn announced in February that filming had wrapped for the Suicide Squad. And right now, he's taken a break from the edit bay to be here with us to discuss his vision for the film, answer fan questions, and have some insanely crazy fun with the cast. And, of course, share some never-before-seen content with us. Check it out.
This is amazing. I'm so excited to be here at DC Fandome with all the amazing DC fans. As many of you know, the Suicide Squad is by far the most fun I've ever had making a movie. I am still working hard on it every day from morning till night, but we're having a great time creating something incredibly special for people. And I'd like to take this break now to take some questions from you guys.
Hey, James. When was the first time you ever read Suicide Squad as a comic book? And who's your favorite character?
I read John Ostrander's original run of Suicide Squad. So I remember reading the very first issue of that run and falling in love with the concept, with the characters. I loved the movie The Dirty Dozen that came out back in the 60s. And this was like a super villain version of The Dirty Dozen. And I loved the character of Amanda Waller, who was so different for the time, in terms of
she's a
being
hard
such
ass.
A strong woman, but not kind of an anti-hero, but kind of bad, kind of good, not physically the same as everybody else you saw in comic books. And I just thought she was so cool. And of course, I loved all the characters and Boomer and everybody. And I just had a great time reading that initial run.
My name is Maja Kondekar, and I'm a loyal DC fan, and I'm making this video from Takabandish. I have a question for James Gunn. Which DC character were you most excited to write about for the Suicide Squad movie, and why?
Meisha. I think the character that I was the most excited to write for was Harley Quinn. I've loved this character ever since Paul Dini first put her in animated shows. I think that there's a sort of chaotic trickster god nature to her where she's just always going off in random directions. And as a writer, that's a really fun thing to deal with because she takes you in places where you don't know you're going to go. So a lot of it was me writing for Harley, and a lot of it was Harley doing some of the writing for me during the Suicide Squad.
Hey, I'm Jake from State Farm, and setting aside the massive amounts of damage that you must have had the squad rack up in that one scene, can you confirm the number of crashes and explosions? Asking for a friend.
Hey, Jake, I cannot confirm the exact amount of explosions and crashes, but I will say that we have about as many explosions and crashes in this film as in any film ever. In fact, the guy who did all of our special effects on this film, Dan Sudik, who has done almost all of the Marvel movies, great movies, says there are more effects in this film than all of those movies he's done combined. So we have quite a huge special effect explosion extravaganza for you guys.
You said Ostrander's run was influential, but what else inspired you to feature these under-the-radar characters?
That is an amazing question, and one I'm excited to answer because I actually had a long talk with John Ostrander about this, because he came and he visited the set. And I said, I don't think of this movie so much as an adaptation of your comics. I think of this movie as a sequel to your comics, to your run in the comic books. What would John Ostrander be doing with these characters, if it was 30 years after he first started? And so I think that it has the spirit and the lifeblood of the Ostrander books, but I also like to continuously take in new supervillains, other supervillains who have sometimes been in the Suicide Squad comics over the years, but also a lot of characters like Polka Dot Man and Ratcatcher, who have never been in the Suicide Squad, but who I just think are great DC villains who have something to offer and that we could have put into the movies. So that is where my biggest inspiration comes from.
Who were your favorite villains as a kid? And did working on this movie teach you anything new about these quote-unquote villains?
Wow, who were my favorite villains growing up? Well, I was a huge Batman fan, and I'm going to tell you who my favorite villain was, and maybe it's a little embarrassing, but I'm not embarrassed by it. It was Batmite. Batmite. I thought he was hilarious and creepy as heck. So Batmite was definitely my favorite supervillain. And don't think I didn't think about putting the Batmite in the Suicide Squad, because I did.
I saw the set photos of the Suicide Squad, and I absolutely love the direction of the movie. But is it true that Flula Boy is playing Javelin Man? And if so, why? Also, is Nathan Fillion playing Blackguard?
Hey, Milan. So, is Flula playing Javelin Man? Well, his name isn't exactly Javelin Man. But in mere moments, we are going to see who Flula
here we go.
is playing in the film. And I'll give you a hint. One of them you got pretty correct, and the other one you didn't get correct. And there's a lot of people all over the internet who have theories about who people are playing, and sometimes they've been right, and sometimes they've been wrong. And so I guess we're going to answer all those questions in a minute.
Oh my God!
I will tell you one thing.
I'm so excited.
Flula Borg is the funniest guy in the entire world, and incredibly strange. But he's become a good friend through all this, and he's a great guy. And Nathan, of course, has been in all my movies. He's already been a friend. Here it comes, the time that so many of you guys have been waiting for. Who is who in the squad? You've heard a lot of the actors that are in this movie. You don't know who they're playing. Maybe you have some good guesses. Maybe you're right. Maybe you're wrong. We'll have to see. But here it is. Everything.
You know the deal. Successfully complete the mission. You got 10
Wanda
years off
Waller.
the sentence.
Viola Davis, okay. Joel Kinnaman, Rick Flag still. Okay. Michael Rooker with long hair. Savant. Board. Javelin. Harley Quinn. Margot Robbie. Polka Dot Man. Lincoln Davis. Ratcatcher. Daniela. Oh. Okay. Idris Elba. Bloodsport. King Shark. Mungo. Okay. Peter Capelli. Thinker. Alicia Chicago. Protonia. Peter Listen. Blackguard. PDK. Nathan Fillion. Sean Gunn. Weasel. Jazz Boomerang. John Cena. Peacemaker. Oh, Taika has to do King Shark.
Here we go. We are introducing the cast and the characters they're playing of the Suicide Squad. First of all, we have Idris Elba as Bloodsport.
Nice.
John Cena as Peacemaker. David Dastmalchian as Polka Dot Man. Jai Courtney as Captain Boomerang. Nathan Fillion as TBK.
Oh, that mustache.
Laura Borg as Javelin. This is like a really messed up Brady Bunch. Daniela Melchior is Ratcatcher 2.
Oh, Ratcatcher 2.
Pete Davidson is Blackguard. Sailing Ing as Mangao. Michael Rooker, unfortunately, is Savant. Put him in the movie. I deal with the devil. Peter Capaldi as the Thinker. Sean Gunn is Weasel. Steve Agee is John Economos and our on-set King Shark.
Yes.
Alicia Braga as Sol Soria. Juan Diego Boco is General Presidente Silvio Luna. Real great guy. Joel Kinnaman is, of course, Rick Flag. Viola Davis is Amanda Waller.
Hey, she's there. Margot Robbie too.
Margot Robbie as Harley Quinn.
That's a big Suicide Squad.
Are you excited to be a part of DC Fandome?
Yes! We're excited. This is going to be great.
Well, we're going to have some fun here. We're going to have some competition.
That is a huge team.
Unless there's somebody winning and somebody losing. And so I would like to have a couple of team leaders, and I think it only makes sense that we have the people in charge of the Suicide Squad, Viola Davis and Joel Kinnaman, as our team leaders.
Hey, team leaders.
Ooh. And why don't you guys go ahead and let's pick team.
Bloodsport.
Thanks, bud. Thanks.
Definitely.
All right, I'll take my girl, Harley Quinn.
All right.
Yay!
I will take Savant.
Oh, good for you. What a bad
That is a bad.
I get a Michael Rooker.
And you guys have scenes together too. I can't believe you made that mistake.
You just did a big mistake.
John Cena. I'll take John Cena.
I want to reassure you that is a horrible decision.
No, I already know that.
I'm going to take my boy, King Shark.
Okay, I will take my man Boomer, Jai Courtney.
All right.
Ooh, Ratcatcher.
Ratcatcher 2.
2. I will take Flula Borg, the Javelin.
Yes. I guarantee we will lose. Yes.
I'm going to take Polka Dot Man.
Yes.
No.
I'm gonna have to grab the Weasel.
Oh, good man.
That's not on Rooker's team.
Yeah, the Weasel. Yes.
We're going out of names.
What what's you make me feel really bad.
There's left. Come on.
There's only
So
one
sad.
It feels like high school. Yeah.
This is what it was like, the basketball.
Yeah, Jesus.
Great idea.
I will pick the Thinker.
Nathan Fillion already. DK.
How do you not pick Nathan Fillion first?
El Presidente.
Okay.
What about Mongo?
He was picked by Joel.
Yeah, thank you, Joe.
Just watch.
Oh, man. Yeah, okay. I was going to pick Blackguard. Okay.
That went well. I think that went really well.
Let's start off. We're going to go head to head, and we're going to start off with team captains. Let's do Joel and Viola. I'm going to pick. This is a good question.
Okay.
I know both of you know so much about the lore of DC Comics. There's a multiple choice, so you don't have to look terrible. Out of all the squad members, who are the only characters to have had their own comic series? There's 2 of them, and I'm going to list 4 options. A, Harley Quinn and King Shark. B, Harley Quinn and Amanda Waller. C, Harley Quinn and Peacemaker. Or D, Harley Quinn and Boomerang. Which 2 have had
Either B or D.
Series.
Harley Quinn and Peacemaker.
Boom! Yes! Yes! That's correct!
Even look, even I knew that.
God, it looks like they had so much fun making this movie.
Mr. Sean Gunn. Weasel versus Polka Dot Man. Old friends.
I want a softball.
There's no answer, I don't.
¿Qué tal, amigos? Hola. ¿Cómo están? How are you? I've got a question. What career military man probably wishes he'd never followed in his dad's footsteps?
Joaquin, the great Cookie Loco.
Rick Flag Jr.
I had Super Grover. Is Super Grover?
Super
Grover.
Wrong, Sean.
Jr.
You're wrong. Wrong canon.
Now, there's no multiple choice. You just got to answer right away, and you have to have it be the right choice.
Okay.
Who has more tattoos, Harley Quinn or Pete Davidson?
No,
Pete, Margot gets another point.
I was thinking about his character. Oh, we were shooting. This is a language. This is a misunderstanding.
That's always your answer when something goes wrong. Who's next?
The Bond.
Billion, TDK.
What is the government's official code name for the Suicide Squad?
Task Force.
I thought it was the Suicide Squad.
No.
The only thing I know.
Mayling's dying over there.
There's a screaming.
Task Force X.
Task Force X. Like,
I can't say that even if I knew the answer.
You said it. You say it in the movie. Some of these are too easy. Hey, can we go to like one of our secret guest questions?
Hey guys, which team member would you sacrifice first?
Rooker. Correct answer.
Rooker.
Are you serious?
What's the answer, Jen?
I would have to go with Savant because he's played by Michael Rooker. And if anyone here has ever had to spend a day working with Michael Rooker, I think they'd probably have the same answer.
You know what? People are always like that. They always want to get rid of the most dangerous one first. Yeah, I understand where the security comes from.
All right, we're going to have Flula versus Elise. Oh, boy! Which character made his or her first full appearance in Superboy #9 in 1994? A. Mongal. B.
Mongal.
King Shark. C. Bloodsport. D. The Thinker.
May I ask a question, Mr. Gunn?
No. Yeah.
When you say full appearance, does this mean like everything was exposed? Is it
The character was not fully exposed. The character had some items of clothing on.
Got it. Then I would answer King Sharky.
I was going to say B.
B. King Shark. How did you guys know that?
Oh, I said King Sharky. That's incorrect. So,
Okay, so it goes to Elise.
yeah, sorry. Jeopardy rules, guys. Pronounce it right.
Like not even crush it.
Wait, he doesn't get that?
You can't just give away the point.
You can fool. You can't give away your point, dude.
Why not? I give away snacks at lunch. Have my point.
Hey.
Is he even on your team?
Yeah, Fluto's on my team.
What are we doing right now? What's happening?
He's not.
You keep complaining.
He's not on our team.
You're on Viola's team.
Wait, I'm not on Lucas' team?
I thought you were on my team too.
Oh.
No, you're not on my team.
Okay. Wait. We have another special question. Why don't we do the last special question?
Hi guys, so now I have a serious question for you guys. I'm going to test your smarts. Who shot Superman? Was it J.R. Ewing, Peacemaker, Bloodsport, Amanda Waller? Let me know.
That is Storm Reed.
My daughter.
Which of your characters is in prison for shooting Superman?
Bloodsport.
Bloodsport.
That's correct. Bloodsport is in prison for shooting Superman. Storm Reed turns in an amazing performance in the film, and some of the most memorable scenes, like really amazing movie. Really, truly.
What movie is that?
Oh my God. Is there anybody left? Pete, who's left? Against two. Lula. Oh, great!
Oh, Lula!
Who will lose first, Pete? What comic book series did the Suicide Squad debut in? A, The Brave and the Bold. B, The Bold and the Beautiful. C, The Bravest of the Bold. Or D, Time to Die Hard. Yeah.
Brave and the Bold.
Brave and the Bold. Pete, it's yours.
Pete, you did it!
Idris Elba, Bloodsport, versus Mei Ling, Mangao. Okay, question. Which character... Oh, this isn't fair. Oh, well. Question. Which character goes into the mission armed with the most weaponry?
Bloodsport.
Oh, isn't it? That's got all the ducks that can.
For the condition.
All the duck can do. Like, he's got hundreds of weapons on it.
Well, it's just one weapon. It's polka dots. Bloodsport pulls off all the different kinds of weapons. The Vandal's weapon that he wears in the movie?
Oh, come on. These those
I was actually, I was editing a scene yesterday, Idris, where you're, and I noticed for the first time that you're going up the side of a wall in your mandals. Well, he always was. I guess he was always wearing his mandals in that scene. I just never noticed till yesterday.
Danielle, you love those mandals, don't you, Danielle?
Okay, who's next? If given the chance, which superhero would your character like to take down?
It's not about taking anybody down. It's about trying to bring yourself up. You know, spread some positive vibes.
Cena for president after that answer. That's it.
Which new addition to the squad was the biggest surprise to you?
I think Weasel was the biggest surprise. You're going to expect him to be this crazy animal. He can't even. I mean, come on.
Wait till you see Weasel in action in the movie.
How is the movie? How does it look?
It's amazing. It's amazing. Like really, truly, it's just the most fun I've ever had. I love the movie. The studio is overwhelmingly happy.
Wow.
It's the action is great. It's funny. And it's really dramatic in the right places and very touching. It's great. And all of you guys, I mean, just down the line, it's just the greatest cast I've ever worked with by far. Just every single person is amazing. It's just a once-in-a-lifetime thing for me. It was a blast to make, and it's just cutting together just completely fluid. Honestly, I'm so grateful to all of you guys, except for Rooker. But I can cut around them pretty easily. So
he's looking at me every day on the cutting room floor. They don't even do that anymore, do they? It's all digital.
They made it digital for you, so we don't even have to look at you on the cutting room floor.
I just got to say, what an amazing experience it was for both of you and all these guys. You know, the atmosphere on that set was so positive. It's such a warm, wonderful, supportive place to be. You know, not everybody has been in a big superhero movie, even if they've been Doctor Who or anything like that. So to walk onto a set like that can be quite intimidating. But the welcome that you and everybody here provided was just fantastic. So thank you and everybody here for that.
Leave it to the British guy to come in right at the end and say something beautiful that makes us all look stupid.
That's what I'm here for. That's what I'm told to think of.
So the showdown champion, I believe, even though we haven't been keeping very good score, is Viola Davis's team. Damn it! So you guys, right? I have a little something special in store for you, which we have you guys right now. And everybody out there in the DC Fandome universe
Oh my God, is
are
it
going to
teaser?
be the first to see a little behind-the-scenes action from The Suicide.
Oh shit, here we go.
I think it's going to surprise people.
Rick Flag with his yellow shirt.
Sit there and go, how did they do that?
It's going to be different from any superhero movie ever made.
Oh, no more?
There's no one better in the world to direct The Suicide Squad than James Gunn.
I was excited with an opportunity to be able to do The Suicide Squad in the way it could be done from my point of view.
This one is completely unique. This is a gritty 1970s war movie combined with the brilliance of James Gunn's characters and comedy.
You need your director to set the vibe.
The Suicide Squad is just...
Harley's suit looks like the
Within each of our characters, there's a certain beauty.
Injustice.
Within most of them. Some of them are just pretty crappy through and through.
Be like a douchey Captain America.
The guy who believes in peace at any cost, no matter how many people he needs to kill along the way.
Okay, I got it.
Don't ever settle back like you think you know where this is going, because you don't.
As soon as you have some sense
It's a lot of
what's
action.
about to happen next, James comes in.
Everyone's exploding. Janitors' heads, arms, legs.
It's like a big, massive graphic novel brought to life.
This is by far the biggest movie I've ever made.
King Shark.
That you know what to expect.
Don't get too attached.
This has been truly the greatest, most exciting journey of my life making this film. God, that was great.
Ah, it's gonna be amazing.
So, that was it. What do you guys think of that? Anyway, I can't wait for everybody to see The Suicide Squad in theaters all the way in August 6th, 2021. We're still working on it, but man, I am so excited for everybody to see it. And I am grateful for everyone out there in the DC universe who came and checked out and hung out with us for a little while and saw this train wreck that was gone perfectly smoothly. It's not for my So, thank you guys.
Way to go, Viola and your team for the win! Ça va, DC Fandome? I'm Terry LTM, your French host, and I've got a big admiration for James Gunn and the cast. What a great teamwork. Now I'm even more excited for the Suicide Squad movie than before. How about you? Tweet us at #DC Fandome. And next, we have a very special DC fan guest with a question for Idris Elba. Gael, mon fils, take it away.
Idris, you're a sport fan. What kind of training did you do for your role in the Suicide Squad?
Okay, so hi Gael, Idris. So yes, I am a sports fan. I am a fan of all sports, but I played basketball,